Okay, in this episode, we want to talk about value in the creative industry from a perspective of feminism. So I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this that I think it's interesting how in our industry, certain things are valued more than other things in the way that we work and how it kind of mirrors society and what we value. And a lot of it has to do with things like things that women are usually doing in our society, like emotional labor. But if we come back to like the creative industry and the work we do, also execution work. We talked about it in the history of feminism episode, that historically women have been more on the craft side of things and doing the execution really, and not getting any credit, not being involved in strategic decisions, not being involved in strategic positions, which are valued more and also pay more. So there's that side of things. And the interesting thing is though that now, like we're in the industry, there's probably a similar split between women and men in terms of who's doing the execution work. It's not just women doing it anymore. And even men now have difficulty justifying their prices if they're just doing execution, difficulty getting a good paying design job because you're just a designer, you're just executing. And it's all like a result of this historic foundation that has been laid by the patriarchal structure, that strategic work is worth more, execution work is worth less. And then also the whole idea of what do we place value on in the work that we do. So these are like kind of the things that we're going to be talking about in this episode. Should we start with what we value in the industry? So before we like go into value in terms of like pricing, I think it's important to understand that there are certain things that clients value about the work that we do, and there are things clients don't value or don't see or think is just included. And it's very similar to like the home. And if we talk about emotional labor in the home, we're talking about, women organizing doctor's appointments for their kids, or if you don't have kids, they're probably the ones doing the meal planning for the week, thinking about when their partner needs to go to the doctor and all those things. Like emotional labor that just kind of like goes unnoticed a lot of the time. And this similar thing is happening in our industry where we do so much emotional labor. We're always thinking like anticipating the needs of the client, anticipating the needs of the project, doing more than just project management, because we're really trying to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And a lot of that is just expected. And obviously it's needed. Like you can't run a project without doing those things. You could, but it wouldn't be such a good experience for the client. It probably wouldn't run so smoothly. But those things are never like written down on an invoice. It's not like you're invoicing emotional labor.
Imagine now. But I think that you could call it differently. I saw such a pity. I forgot what they named it, but it was such a good like line item, which directly referred to which kind of like disguised the emotional labor part. I need to look it up.
Who was it?
I saw it on Threads.
Okay, so someone was actually invoicing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because sometimes, the thing is every project is different because every client is different. And that's where that emotional labor comes in. Like some clients need a lot more emotional labor and hand-holding than other clients do. And we should be invoicing that, because if a client is really difficult, it's costing you a lot of time, it's costing you a lot of energy, it's costing you a lot of emotional labor hours. And that should be something that you just invoice. Like it might not be in the initial offer, you should include something about it. I feel like it's important for us to be more transparent about what goes into the work. But then if it ends up being more work, then we should just invoice that. And I think that women in particular have trouble doing that because we always want to be likable. We don't want to cause conflict. We don't want to cause any kind of a discussion about why is this suddenly more expensive? Like we're always having to justify everything we do. So I think a lot of people are probably hesitant. But I think that the designer, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman, has that problem because we're constantly like our work is constantly being devalued and questioned and like, why did it take this long? Why is it so expensive? And all these things.
Yeah. Do you think that also came like from the wave of when suddenly a lot of women go into certain fields? It becomes kind of like a women field, if that's what you call it. And it suddenly then gets devalued. And do you think that that's something that happened with the design field as well? Considering last time we ran some numbers or we read out some numbers, and it's pretty clear that design has become more like a field for women, not the ones that are visible, however, the ones that are in the background.
Yeah.
And I feel like that also affects, this is something that you also mentioned in the previous episode, that it also affects men who are now in this field, because by proxy, their work is also devalued now.
Yeah.
And which is so sad because
I think it's definitely true. It's the same thing with teachers or nurses. Those are also two fields that are predominantly performed by women. And the men in those fields are not making more because these, at least like in a socialist society like our country, these systems are set up by the government. So they're paid by the government. So it's not like, you know, in other private companies, this probably does happen in the industry, creative industry, like a man has a potential to earn more just because he's a man. But it's not like that in these government jobs. Like everyone just has the same salary regardless of their gender. So yeah, the whole field gets devalued, and then the men in those fields also earn less and are affected by the patriarchy. I think that has happened in our industry. I think historically women have been the ones to do the execution, and that hasn't changed much, meaning that it is a women's field. And because of that, the whole job has been devalued. And then the men in those jobs are also not valued, or their work isn't valued. And is it valued more than women doing the job? Probably. Like subtly, it probably is in like individual cases. I'm sure there are individual cases where men make more than women doing the same thing in the same agency. But I think as a whole, it probably is a symptom of the bigger issue, which is that like the structure never changed. The structure that was set up back in the day where women were working for free or doing creative work just like they were expected to do and weren't compensated a lot, weren't included in the credits, weren't included in like the strategic decisions, has created a system where the whole idea of a designer is just not valued. And yeah, and who places value on things? We talked about this in the previous episode a little bit. I do want to go into it more in this episode because I feel like we talked about it after we recorded the episode, and then I thought of like some more things I wanted to say. And it was about like the awards thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because we recently talked about this in the context of Austria and the awards here. And the thing is that there's a huge value placed on awards in Austrian culture. I'm not sure if it's the same like in every country, but it's definitely a thing here. But who is at the top of these award systems? Like it's men, and then in the jury, it's also men, mostly. And then they're giving the award to other men because the people submitting the work are people who are running agencies. And we looked at that last episode, like that those are mostly men doing that, running the agency. So all the women behind that work who are executing it, they're never credited for that work. And then what happens is you have these juries who set a standard of you can only sit in the jury if you've achieved something. But these women will never achieve anything because they're never included in the credits, even though of course they've achieved stuff. It's just not documented anywhere. And that's like so frustrating because how are you supposed to dismantle this structure if you're never allowing women to participate in it? And that's something that's so funny as well when we go back to the thing about our industry acts like we're so progressive. And these exact awards organizations, they're always talking about how can we get more women into the jury? How can we include more women? And then they'll invite guests like they invited us onto the jury. And it's like all just performative at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's like, one would argue that people who sit there are like the top notch in that field.
The experts.
The experts in that field. I mean, that's what I would assume, right? And I remember sitting there and it was us and another team that was an expert in that specific field. There were like different categories and every category had a different jury. Makes sense. And I thought in our category, which was it was websites or digital design. I don't know, something related to us. I think that hardly anyone actually worked in that field. Like there were some generalist freelancers sitting there, I remember, and I thought, okay, like there's so many experts on that field in Vienna. Like you can't tell me that me and this other person were the only like real expert from this field.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there's just so much wasted potential that could be included there, men or women alike. And it was just like sad to see that even the so-called experts that are sitting there, or the people who have been called there, I absolutely don't want to discredit them. They're amazing in their field, but I just felt like the field was like kind of, they weren't like selected well in terms of expertise in a specific field.
Yeah, and that also shows that their standard of who they're letting onto the jury is not, they're acting like it's set high by saying you have to have achieved something, as in you have to have won an award or received an honorable mention or something, participated in this award organization in some way. But then they aren't even choosing real experts to sit there.
Yeah, did we talk about this last episode? I'm not 100% sure about the award system itself, the having to pay for it.
Yeah,
I think
that we went into. Exactly,
okay, perfect. Then let's just like reel back to that example where what we mentioned last episode, that the award systems are also not accessible for you as a designer.
Yeah.
Like you really need to put money into it. And some agencies have so much budget that goes towards that. We're talking a few 10Ks.
Yeah.
That just goes into that because they just submit for everything.
It's their marketing expense that they account for every year.
Exactly. But imagine like smaller studios or freelancers, men, women alike. How do you even get in there? And once you win, you kind of have to like give up your savings just to be mentioned or just to like bring the award home.
Yeah. So the whole system isn't accessible to anyone who isn't a big agency. These big agencies are all run by men. So what happens is you have all this credit going to these men, and it's always the same agencies submitting their work and winning. And it's just this cycle that continues because they're not making a real effort to change anything about the system. If they really were interested in like merit and giving some like the best person the award, they would take away that barrier in some way. Like I understand they have to make money in order to facilitate all the stuff they're doing. That makes sense to me, but they should at least offer, I don't know, a few hundred submissions a year to people who can't pay for it, so that you actually have the opportunity to be credited as, and it's gonna be a lot of women applying to those things because they're not included in the credits if they're executing. So when would they be included? It would be when they're self-employed and have the opportunity to submit their work. And that's the only way they would ever be included in the credit. But they don't have that opportunity because they don't have the money. So it's not accessible for anybody who's not a big agency, but especially for women who want to be in a jury. Like I understand wanting to have that credit and the award, it does do something to your brand, like especially in Austria. Like it's a huge marketing strategy here to have that award, at least have the mention of the award. Like even if you didn't win it, often you get like honorable mention or something. That's already a lot. Like to have that on your website, it's gonna pull in more clients. And then you just have like this cycle of the same agencies being mentioned, the same agencies winning awards, the same agencies getting the clients. And it's like you never have that opportunity if you're not involved in that.
Yeah. I mean, another thing, I want to reel it back a bit into the value aspect.
Yeah.
Like one value would be, I guess, awards. Another value is output and like what clients value.
Yeah.
It's mostly output because I would say most clients are not really like worse what's going on behind the scenes. So of course, what they see is the output. And I think that's also a bit like a reflection of what society sees as valuable. Because in my opinion, what society sees as valuable is actually output. So also, let's say in the housework, everything that is visible, you're kind of like, oh, okay, something happened here, right? But everything that's mental, as in emotional, it's just like not valuable because you don't see a direct output. Of course, there's an output to that. Like you mentioned, okay, you have to think of the doctor's appointment. And then you have to facilitate all that. And then you have a doctor's appointment, but you don't see the process of it or like something else, like seemingly small, but if you add everything, like it sums up to a lot once you add everything together. Because, for example, I mean, in the spirit of Christmas, who thinks of the Christmas presents most of the time? It's women. And then, okay, so you have to think what they like. Then you have to think where to get them. Then you have to go and get them. And in the end, you have the output of having the present at home. You have to wrap them, of course. And that's then basically the output. But the output seems so easy. You just bought it from the store, right? You don't see what went into it in the background. And I think something similar happens also in the creative industry. There's so much going on in the background, and the output seems so minimal. Just on the topic of websites, when you think, okay, this is just a simple landing page. Why did it take like 3 months to do? And like looking at the products, you would really be like, okay, it seems like really minimal, but there went so much work into it in the background that is not visible, like client management, project management, feedback loops, a lot of research, everything that adds up to this project being successful, even if it's minimal.
Yeah, I think that's really important for us to start like educating clients on the process. I think that's something that not enough people do. I think there's a lot of like misconception about how much time things take. And yes, and I think it mirrors what happens in other areas of society. And I think it is linked to the patriarchy. I think that this obsession with the output and value, like assigning value to that and not assigning value to everything that goes into that output is so like reflective of the way that society values other things. And I think that one way to create more awareness for that is to really put every single thing on like in an offer. I think a lot of people create offers and it's like the output is written there, like logo, maybe even hours because maybe they're doing hourly pricing. But there's so much, like you said, that goes into creating a logo, like research, brand research, branding, like what should the logo even be about? Like who's the target group? All this stuff, like all this thinking that's going into just a logo. It needs to be documented somehow so that the client understands what's going on there. And I think it is helpful for clients because I personally have been on the client side of hiring services, and it hasn't been creative services, it's been like construction services. But I had 2 companies make an offer for like fixing some water damage in my parents' house. One of them just sent like a 1-page thing, and it was like a huge amount, like crazy amount, where I felt like had it been justified, maybe I would have felt like it's okay, but it wasn't even justified like at all. It just said like the final price and like how many like days it would take or something like that. And I was just like kind of confused because I don't know what goes into that work. And yeah, I could just blindly be like, okay, this is an expert, they know what they're doing. Or I look at another offer and then I get this other offer, which is like 3 pages long. It's really detailed about which materials are going to be used, how much they cost, like where is the money going? And then there's like the labor and the cleanup and all that stuff. And then I feel like the price is justified because I'm like, okay, I actually see what's going into that. It's not just like this final output price. And I think that's an issue that we have in the creative industry is that we have things like Fiverr and freelancer.com where you see like the price of an output and then clients get this idea of what an output should cost. And then they're never told like what goes into that. And then they come to you as like a second stage thing often because maybe they didn't find what they needed on Fiverr, but then they still expect those prices from you, even though you're a creative service provider who does like actual mental labor when they create something. So I don't know. I guess some clients wouldn't even respond well to an offer that's really detailed. But I think that is one way to make it more transparent about what goes into what you're doing, so that value is like seen. But I don't know if it would change anything long term. And no, I feel like we've already been doing this for a really long time, and there's still a lot of disconnect in terms of what's valuable.
Yeah, I guess that's something that you can't really educate anyone about. I mean, you can educate them, but you can't really make them see a value that they just don't see.
Yeah.
Simply like with other products too. Like if I don't see the value in an iPhone, I'm just like, why should I overpay for this phone? That's probably less, like, in terms of specs, less good than another phone that's way cheaper. And then I go and buy the other phone. But I don't see the value in the whole ecosystem. I don't see the whole value in the constant updates that you get for I don't know how many years. Like once you know all those things, it's really hard to not see the value, but some people still don't. So I guess that's kind of like an equivalent to that.
Another thing that clients value, in addition to just final output, is how fast you are in doing what you do. Like a lot of clients will come and they'll be like, we need this ASAP, like we need this yesterday, which one happens because they don't understand the process, obviously. But two is they also just value speed. Like they want you to be fast. They want you to be fast because they think, one, it's going to be cheaper if you're fast. And two, they need it ASAP. So that's why they want you to be fast. But the thing is, being fast is I feel like it's so unrealistic and unsustainable for women. Like just as a woman who knows what it's like to have, your hormones are just like so different every week. It's not like this straight line. Like people have talked about it in like the fitness scene. Women will get like a fitness routine designed by a man, and it's like you do the same thing every week, but that's not representative of your energy level. Like that's not realistic for women to do the same thing every week because it's highly dependent on your cycle and where you are in your cycle. So like we're already getting there like in the fitness world in terms of awareness about that, but we're nowhere near we're not even close to the awareness level we would need in our industry or any industry that's like a 9 to 5 to change like that for women to make it more sustainable. Because the one good thing is being self-employed is you can decide when to do things, and like if you're having a bad week you just do less, or like you do whatever your energy level allows you to do. But then you have clients that expect you to like, I need this by the end of the week, or I need this tomorrow, and they value the idea of you being able to work consistently and at the same energy level every single day, which I think for men is way more realistic than for women. And it's like, again, this thing that's just another symptom of the patriarchy where everything is built based on what men are able to do.
I think to add on top of that, which is not really gender related, I would say, is that creativity is not linear either. Like you have actually two variables that work against you in this field. Like one is, of course, being a woman, not having like just a constantly nice, balanced hormonal, not being hormonally balanced, if that's the right way to put it. Like, for example, I have extreme brain fog. I'm like useless for 2 days before my period or during my period.
Yeah.
Like I really cannot work. And that's just horrible. And not to mention the other things that happen. But on top of that, creativity is not like something you can just like switch on and off. Even if you have to do something at a speed, sometimes just extremely fast because you're super inspired, you're motivated, you're having a good day, you're having like a good creativity peak. Sometimes there are no ideas coming to you. And I think that's like kind of like a difference between, I don't know, maybe other service-based work where you go somewhere, you do something physical, which is like less to do with like your mental state and your creativity.
Yeah.
Versus, in the creative field, it's just so abstract to be like really productive on the same level. And on top of that, what you mentioned as an issue for women, that on top of the creativity already not being like linear, you also have your hormones that aren't acting linear, and you kind of have like two variables working against you in this field.
Yeah, and then you have the benefit of being self-employed theoretically. But like we talked about last episode, being self-employed is not an option for women if you want to have children. Unless you have a partner who is going to do that, take over that part, as in going into maternity leave for a year. And I mean a year, like, because you can't do that as being self-employed. It would be impossible to have a sustainable and successful business if you just leave for 1 year. And like we talked about last episode, at least in Austria, you aren't offered enough money for that to be like financially, like a good decision financially. So yeah, then you're stuck in this 9 to 5. Like your only option if you do want to have children is to work at an agency as a designer, where you probably will make not a lot of money because you're in an execution role. Then maybe you work your way up to art director, you make enough money, whatever. But then you're stuck in this 9 to 5, which is not sustainable. And I feel that way about, and I know this isn't like specific to the creative industry, but like in any industry that has the 9 to 5, that was not made for us, like not at all. And it's so obvious. I don't understand how we are still in the system where 9 to 5 is considered normal and considered okay and healthy. Like, obviously, I don't think it's even healthy for men, but it's like particularly not sustainable for women. I genuinely don't understand how it's been so long and we're not even close to dismantling that part of the structure. Yeah, so we have a big, I'd say, like, luck in our situation because we're like both able to decide when we work and like what we do, but it's not something that a lot of women get the opportunity to do. And
no,
yeah, it's a huge issue in our industry.
I mean, we also mentioned in the last episodes that we were like how in a privileged position, and I think that due to that position, we were able to get where we are right now.
Yeah, so to come back to clients and what they value, similarly to like 9 to 5, which is all about like spending all of your time at the agency and whatever, like time is always like this thing that you have to kind of give up. And clients expect you to just like drop everything for them and do things really fast and all that. And that's like problematic in a lot of ways. And a lot of that can be fixed through like good boundaries if you're self-employed. And a lot of it can also be fixed by changing the way that we price our work. Like, I think hourly based pricing already sets you up for like those kinds of conversations. And that's why we always advise against it. In most cases, moving towards value-based pricing is going to become even more important now with AI. Because AI will make you faster and it will make you be able to deliver things super fast, and which is positive for you, but it's not positive for you if you're doing hourly based pricing, because suddenly it's like, oh, I only needed 2 hours instead of 5. And now I've like lost half my income. So you need to be pricing things based off of your value. And that's why it's so important to educate clients on what that value is and what is valuable about your work. It's not the execution at the end of the day. And that is unfortunate and probably is something that is also part of the patriarchy and like the history of design. But with that moving towards like AI doing all of it, what is the value of your work now? The value of your work is going to have to become the emotional labor. Like, we need to make a huge shift in our industry from valuing like the output to valuing everything that goes into creating that output, which is emotional labor, client management, project management, and all this stuff that goes into getting there.
Yeah, so shift to value process instead of the output.
Yeah, valuing process, and then also pricing based off of that value and not based off of how long it took you and like how much that output should cost. You know what I mean? So like, it's really important that we understand the understanding that I feel like a lot of creatives already have for value becomes something universal that clients also are able to understand.
Yeah, because I don't know how else the creative industry should survive.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I'm not trying to doomsday this, but what you mentioned with AI, with output being worth even less, like it's all like in the design industry specifically, it's already worth next to nothing. And now on top of that, AI could do a lot of things, like execution wise. Obviously, it's not there yet that it's like perfect, but like, I don't know, give it a few years and let's see what happens then. So we really need to shift the perspective onto the process versus the output, because a lot of people, like obviously I think most freelancers are really good at execution, but not all of them are good in the emotional labor part. And I think that's what makes the biggest difference for the clients actually, of why they keep working with you versus why they would like look for someone else.
Because at the end of the day, the clients aren't going to start using AI. They're not going to start sitting there and prompting. They're still going to hire creatives to do it. And they will understand also that you're using AI. Maybe clients will go to you because you don't use AI. Like there's going to be clients that value that as well. But most clients aren't going to care. And they're going to be aware of the fact that you probably are doing your work super fast. So then you need to make them understand that it still costs what it costs, and it's still super high value because you're taking that emotional labor off of their shoulders. You're the one making sure that that output gets to where they want it to be, and they don't have to worry about like how you got there. And that's the thing, like that's what they're actually buying from you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Never Went to Business School. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify, and if you enjoy our content, check out our YouTube channel for more educational videos and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack.